they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief.
I was working on the Gmail team, and I was noticing I was getting addicted to email, and I was noticing I was getting addicted to all of these social products. And all my friends in college actually started Instagram. So I saw how in general, it felt like we were losing our way, that more and more of our work was about manipulating people into getting their attention and less about what's really good for people. Why are we here in the first place?
Your behaviors, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. I think in the back, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. But I think the way we defined it was not like this.
It's why we count the likes, it's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it, it's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly addictive.
The way the technologist Jaron Lanier puts it is that these companies offer you shiny treats in exchange for minutes of your attention and bytes of your personal data, which can then be packaged up and sold.
For your own good, it's because you're being subtly manipulated by algorithms that are watching everything you do constantly and then sending you changes in your media feed, in your diet, that are calculated to adjust you slightly to the liking of some unseen advertiser. And so if you get off that, you can have a chance to experience a clearer view of yourself and your life. But then the reason for society might be even more important. Society has been gradually darkened by this scheme in which everyone is under surveillance all the time, and everyone is under this mild version of behavior modification all the time. It's made people jittery and cranky. It's made teens especially depressed, which can be quite severe. But it's made our politics kind of unreal and strange, where we're not sure if elections are real anymore.
An entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse.
The people who run the tech companies like Google and Facebook are not doing the manipulating, they're doing the addicting. But the manipulating, which rides on the back of the addicting, is the paying customer of such a company. So, many of those customers are not at all bad influences. They might simply be trying to promote their cars or their perfumes or whatever. And indeed, I have sympathy for them because they're concerned that if they don't put money into the system, nobody will know about them anymore.
How is it different to just television advertising or billboard advertising or anything else?
The difference is the constant feedback loop. So when you watch the television isn't watching you. When you see the billboard isn't seeing you. And vast numbers of people see the same thing on television and see the same billboard. When you use these new designs, social media, search, YouTube, when you see these things, you're being observed constantly, and algorithms are taking that information and changing what you see next. And they're searching and searching and searching, and they're just blind robots. There's no evil genius here until they find those patterns, those little tricks that get you and make you change your behavior.
We have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. And I would encourage all of you, as the future leaders of the world, to really internalize how important this is. If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you. If you push back on it, we have a chance to control it and rein it in. And it is a point in time where people need to hard break from some of these tools and the things that you rely on.
So if you got 100 likes or if you got 100 comments and 10 of them are negative, that we're evolved to really care about that. And just because I know how all this works doesn't mean that if you use it and you're in there, it doesn't affect you the same way. In fact, with the film's coverage on Twitter, I mean, I'm addictively checking to see what do people think of the film. And I think that's the thing I think is hopefully illuminating for people, is that you shouldn't feel like it's your fault when you feel so addicted to your phone, because there's a massive asymmetry between the 1,000 people behind the screen and the supercomputers that are pointed at our brains to try to predict the perfect thing to get us to stay longer. Hopefully that's illuminating and clarifying to people and gives us back some agency.
I've been using it, and I have to tell you, I thought I was fairly disciplined about this, and I was wrong.
Affects both adults and children, if anything, are just affected more by it, because when you're in high school and your self-worth and social approval are, well, my friend Susie got 2,000 views on her video and I only got 300. Even if you as a kid opt out of the system, let's say someone watches the film and they say, I'm going to get off of Instagram. Well, at that school, everyone else is still comparing each other based on how many views and how many likes and what people are saying, which is what's so kind of diabolical about it, is that they have co-opted our sense of belonging because you now feel excluded if you don't participate. TikTok, for example, the way that they got a bunch of teenagers to go from Instagram to TikTok is they said, well, if you could post a photo here, we'll give you even more likes and more views because they're just better at cycling it through different people. And that's how they get us so addicted. It's almost like social growth hormone. They give us this false, inflated social approval that only leaves us wanting more afterwards.
The problem is that behaviorist techniques are often invisible to the person who's being manipulated. And this has a long history. This has been done for a long time. It used to be that the only way to be subjected to continuous observation and modification was to either be in an experiment. You could be in the basement of a psychology building and have students tweaking you for their projects, or you could join a cult, or you could be in an abusive relationship. I mean, this has been done before, and often the people who are in these situations do not realize it's happening to them. In fact, the whole point is that it's sneaky. It's a mechanical approach to manipulating people, and because it's so algorithmic, it doesn't involve direct communication, and people don't get the cues to understand what's happening with them.
Your behaviors, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. It was unintentional, but now you got to decide how much you're willing to give up, how much of your intellectual independence. And don't think, oh yeah, not me, I'm fucking genius, I'm at Stanford. You're probably the most likely to fucking fall for it. Because you were fucking checkboxing your whole goddamn life. No offense, guys.
They make money from our attention and our behavior. They need us to spend lots of time on the service. And they have to, we call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem, that who is willing to go lower on the brainstem to get that attention.
Right.
So a person who's checking addictively is worth more. They're addictively checking their phone like a slot machine. Sometimes you pull that slot machine, you get something nice, you get those 5 new likes or rewards. Other times you pull to refresh and you don't get anything. And it's that randomness that makes it so addictive.
The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. And it's not an American problem. This is not about Russian ads. This is a global problem. So we are in a really bad state of affairs right now, in my opinion. It is eroding the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other. And I don't have a good solution. You know, my solution is I just don't use these tools anymore. I haven't for years. It's created huge tension with my friends, huge tensions in my social circles. If you look at, like, you know, my Facebook feed, I've posted maybe 2 times in 7 years, 3 times, 5 times. Like, just, it's less than 10. And it's weird. I guess I kind of just innately didn't want to get programmed, and so I just tuned it out. But I didn't confront it. And now to see what's happening, it really bums me out. Like, think about, like, there were these examples where there was a hoax in WhatsApp where in some, like, village in India, people were, like, afraid that their kids were going to get kidnapped, etc. And then there were these lynchings that happened as a result, where people were like vigilante running around. They think they found the person, and I mean, seriously? Like, that's what we're dealing with. You know, imagine, like, when you take that to the extreme, where, you know, bad actors can now manipulate large swaths of people to do anything you want. It's a really, really bad state of affairs. And we compound the problem, right? We curate our lives around this perceived sense of perfection because we get rewarded in these short-term signals, hearts, likes, thumbs up, and we conflate that with value, and we conflate it with truth. And instead, what it really is fake, brittle popularity that's short-term and that leaves you even more, and admit it, vacant and empty before you did it. Because then it forces you into this vicious cycle where you're like, what's the next thing I need to do now? Because I need it back. Think about that compounded by 2 billion people. And then think about how people react then to the perceptions of others. It's really bad.